Well, hey guys, welcome to Made by Mitch. Today I'm going to show you how I built this workbench with built-in electric. So before I get started in how I built this workbench, I wanted to first share with you a couple reasons why I made this workbench the way that I did. The first reason is I wanted my workbench to be really mobile. I wanted it to be on wheels, I wanted it to be lighter, and I wanted it to have some storage underneath so that I could wheel it around the shop. It's also going to be my outfeed table for my table saw, so because my shop is so small, I wanted it to be mobile. The second thing I wanted it to be is I wanted it to be versatile. I wanted it to have multiple uses. So I built in electric to it so that way I could plug some things in, the tools that I'm always constantly using. Another thing is I used an MDF top because I'm going to be doing multiple different types of projects on this, and then if it gets tore up I can just replace the top later on. I got the inspiration for this build from Bob at I Like to Make Stuff, so thanks Bob. I'll put a link to his video down in the description. But with all that said, let me show you what I did to make this workbench. So let's get started with the build. First thing I had to do was measure out all of my 2x4s and cut them to size. Now the final size of my bench is 60 inches by 24 inches wide, and so the first thing I did was measure out the side pieces and then the braces that would be in between. Like I've done in some of my previous videos, whenever you have a cut that's repetitive, you can use one of those cuts as a template and then just mark all your other cuts from that. That way you know they're all the same size. So I've done that here as well. So for this workbench, I'm basically making two of these frames, one for the top and one for the bottom. And I'm going to put a sheet of MDF to fit the size of the top and the bottom to have some storage, and then the top to be my work surface. And for all these joints I'm gluing them, and then I'm just pre-drilling and using 2.5-inch screws to join them together. And I went around and did this to all the different joints for both top and the bottom pieces. And so what I'm doing here in the end, I wanted to mention that I'm using a piece of scrap 2x4 to do the corner, because that's where the legs are going to go to attach the top and the bottom together. And now it's time to attach the bottom piece to the top piece. I'm using just 2x4s to put in this gap I left here when I built them together. And I'm just gluing them up, and then I will pre-drill and then screw these in. And I'll do this all the way around the base here, and then I will attach the top. And while I'm doing this, why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I really appreciate your support, you watching my videos, and then also make sure you hit that little bell. That way anytime I post a video that you're notified. Thank you. Alright, now it's time to attach the other platform to the top of these legs. And so the first thing I did was add glue, and then I just tried to set it in place, and this was a little interesting, so I had to kind of just finagle it around and find the best way to get it to stay there without falling on me. So the best way I found was just to use clamps. So I would do a corner at a time, and I would add pressure on both directions so that way I knew it was square, and then I would just pre-drill and screw those in. I did this for all 4 corners. So while I had the bench flipped this way, I went ahead and added the casters, and I just marked where I wanted them, pre-drilled and screwed them, and did this also in all 4 corners. Wanted to mention this, do not get 2-inch casters. They're fine for now, but I am going to replace them and make them a little bit larger. So please, if you do this, do at least 3-inch or larger casters, something that locks a little bit more heavy duty. I would recommend for sure. So it's starting to take shape, as you can see. Next thing to do is to add the top on. So I went to my local Home Depot and I got 3/4-inch MDF, and I went ahead and had them rip it in half because that way it would fit in my car a little bit better. Then I just brought it home and I cut it to size to fit my workbench. And always use a straight edge when you're making cuts like this, especially when it needs to be really square. And I just use a straight board and I clamp it on, and it always works fine for me. So the next thing I had to do was attach the top to the 2x4s, and so I pre-drilled all my holes, and then I used this countersink bit to countersink all the holes. That way they never got in the way. And one thing I did here is I did all the corners first. That way, if anything was uneven or unsquare, you put one corner in and then go to the opposite side, and then you can kind of manipulate it to where it's all even with all your edges. And then I just went around the whole thing, and I added screws, and then I went across the middle braces that I made earlier. So then I had to install the bottom piece of MDF, and I did the exact same thing as I did for the top one. It was a little more difficult to get it to fit. I don't know if something was unsquare or if something was off a little bit, but I had to end up trimming a couple corners, and it took me a good 20 minutes to get it to fit. But once I finally got it in and fit, I just did the same thing. I pre-drilled all the holes, countersunk the holes, and then drilled them all in place. So once everything was constructed, it was time to start moving on to installing the electric. And what I did was just installed 2 electrical boxes, one on each side of the bench. And so right here I'm drilling holes in the studs just to run the wire. And then I just ran the wire through the studs to tie the boxes together. I did want to mention that when it comes to electrical work, it's not something to mess around with, and I know certain states require certain codes with things like this, so you want to look into what your state or your area requires before you do this yourself. And if you're not comfortable with it, then also don't do it. So what I've done up to this point is just cut the wires to length and then strip them of the insulation. So I'll be wrapping these wires around the outlet terminals. So the copper wire you see is the ground, the white is the neutral wire, and the black is the hot wire. So when I attach these to the terminals, you got to make sure you don't get these things mixed up. Your white wire will go to your silver terminal, your ground will go to the green terminal, and your black hot wire will go to the gold terminal. And then I just attached the faceplate, and then this outlet was done. I just repeated this process for the other side, attaching them together. And then out of the other outlet, I just was leaving a blank wire that I would cut off and install a plug on. And this plug is made to go with wire that I'm using, which is called 12-2 wire. And it's got these little connection points where you just plug the wire into, open that little gate flap, and then the wire is seated in there and makes a good connection. So what I did is I just stripped the other end of the wire to bare wire, and then I plugged the wire into these holes and then shut the little gates. And remember that you need to also attach the other end of the plug before you put those wires in. So I took it back off and I reassembled, and with that the workbench was complete. I'm really happy with the way this turned out. It serves a great purpose for what I'm going to be using it for. I'm sure at some point down the road I'm going to want something different, maybe something a little more or bigger or more sturdy, but for now this does exactly what I wanted to do. Able to put my air compressor on one side and just leave it permanently plugged in, so that way whenever I need to use my nail gun, it's there, and then my planer on the other side, so whenever I need to use it I can just swing the whole bench out and I'm good to use it. Well, thank you so much for watching this video. If it's your first time watching one of my videos, I just want to say welcome to my channel, and you can check out some of the other project videos that I have available. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing. No pressure, but it would really help me out. Also, give me a thumbs up. And if you want to keep track of what's happening around my shop, you can follow me on Instagram at MadeByMitch, or you can visit my website at mademitch.com. Thank you guys. We'll see you next time.